we all understand that if you have a safe city, you'll have a more economically vibrant city. You'll have a city that's more focused on its quality of life and place. And so I thank my fellow City Board of Director members who are also committed to public safety. And that's paramount when you have such a time and an event as this, where we're committing this amount of time and hours towards making certain that we not only honor and admire the men and women of our law enforcement community, but also focus on how do we continue to be laser focused on public safety. And so today I also want to recognize those that will be in attendance throughout the duration of the day, which are FBI Special Agent in Charge Diane Upchurch, Pulaski County Sheriff Eric Higgins, members of the Governor's Office, Attorney General's Office, as well as Senators Bozeman and Congressman Hill's offices as well. We indeed have members of the Department of Justice, ATF, DEA, U.S. Attorney's Office and Prosecuting Attorney's Office, our crime lab, and even so our community corrections. So I want to thank them for attending today. As I shared earlier, public safety is Little Rock's top priority, and it deserves our full attention. And today's event provides the perfect opportunity to spotlight what we're doing to keep Little Rock residents safe. I want to take some time to recognize Assistant Chief Wayne Bewley. As you know, when we first entered the office, he was one of three that were a part of our interim chiefs during a period of time and helping to navigate different waters for me as I was leading this city. And so during this period of time when we spent a lot of time with Chief Wayne Bewley, we talked about this Public Safety Summit and how we can continue to share with the community what we're doing the present day to make certain that we become the safest city in Arkansas, and most importantly, one of the safest cities in this entire nation. And so this was yet a dream and an idea between both Chief Wayne Bewley and I. And to have this type of event to come to realization today, it's eye-opening to me of what we can do when we are collaboration, have a lot of concerted efforts. So thank you, Chief Wayne Bewley. I do appreciate you. Our goal and our mission, as you know, that we have now a new Chief of Police in Keith Humphrey, is to make certain that we have 21st century community policing. That is a mission for the two of us as we lead our city to make certain that we're one of the safest cities in the United States. And so part of that process you'll see today is where we will update you on what the Little Rock Police Department has been doing to make certain that safety is priority number one, what we're doing to improve community relations, what we're doing to truly have community policing within the city of Little Rock as we become the safest city in the state and the safest city in the United States. So that's our ultimate goal. We have our partners here today who will react to what we're discussing today, from Captains Temple and Captain King and many others who will be a part of this process from 9:45 to about 11 o'clock, which really will be the Little Rock Police Department sharing what we've done in the past, improvements that we've made to get us to this present day, and show our North Star on making this one of the safest cities in the state going forward. And so a part of our plan is not only making certain that this city is one of the safest cities in the United States, but to make certain that we are focusing on what we call our ACT plan: accountability, clarity, and transparency. Anything that we do, we want to make certain that we're accountable to the people, that we're clear with our people, and that we're transparent with our people. And as we focus on our ACT plan, that makes certain that we truly are improving on community relations, that we are building trust, and that we're executing. And as we build relationships, build trust, and execute within both the law enforcement community and the community at large, that makes certain that the city of Little Rock is a united city together. And when you have a united city and a safe city, we will become one of the best cities in this United States. So right now, after I've shared our ACT plan, I've shared that public safety is priority number one, and we're focused on 21st century community police. And I want to bring up to you today our new Chief of Police, Keith Humphrey.
Morning. Can you believe it's been 90 days? 90 days. 90 days. My hair is falling out. Just 90 days. Well, good morning to everyone. And as the mayor says, thank you, Mayor, for once again giving me this opportunity. To the amazing men and women of the Little Rock Police Department, to our community partners, our law enforcement partners, our business partners, to the board of directors, to the communities, thank you for being here this morning. It is a great honor for me to be here and to talk about what we're doing here in the city of Little Rock to meet our vision, meet our mission. As you know, when we went through the process, one of the things that was conveyed was that we do want to be one of the safest cities. I truly believe that. Will it happen overnight? Absolutely not. Will it happen? Absolutely. I believe under my watch and under the watch of the mayor and the watch of the men and women of this department and our citizens, that we will be one of the safest cities, the safest city in the state, and definitely one of the safest cities in America. But let me tell you a little bit about our mission. Our mission all focuses on trust. You cannot accomplish anything in any community or any organization, any community, any household without having trust. And our mission statement simply says, the Little Rock Police Department is committed to protecting life and property through teamwork. That's a very important aspect of this. If you look around the room, we're not trying to do this by ourselves. This is a team effort. And, you know, one of the things that I will say since 9/11, there has been a large emphasis, a continuing emphasis on local law enforcement and federal partners, county partners, state partners working together in order to make our communities safe. We have gotten away from it to us versus them. You know, we've gotten away from it being a federal issue. We've gotten away from it being a county issue or a state issue. It is a community. We're one big community. And so we have to have teamwork, and then we have to embrace mutual respect. Respect for each other. We don't look at it as that's a sheriff's problem. We don't look at it that's a federal problem. We don't look at that that's a community problem. We don't look at it as if it's a specific problem to a certain area. It's a problem for everyone. We respect what everyone says. We respect what they believe. We respect their input. The other one is we have to understand what's actually going on. We have to understand when we are experiencing crimes, we have to understand that affects everyone. No one wants to be affiliated with a city or any organization that has a bad reputation. And so we have to understand why things are occurring. How do we make things better? The other thing is we have to have professional service. And I've said this from day one in becoming a law enforcement officer. We have to understand that law enforcement, city government, state government, federal government exists because our citizens allow us to exist. And so why would you not want to provide top quality customer service to those individuals that provide us an opportunity to provide for our families? The other thing is we have to be transparent. This is not the law enforcement agencies of the 70s, 80s, and 90s. This is not the profession of the 70s, 80s, and 90s. This is a profession in which we must share our efforts. And let me say this, people understand, communities totally understand that there are some things that we are not able to share. I don't think there's anyone who will question that. But there are things that citizens need to know. As a citizen, you do have a right to know what crime looks like in your area. You do have a right to know what we're doing. Maybe not down to the letter of the law what we're doing, but you do need to know that we're actively addressing your concerns. That means meeting with you all. And we've gotten to a point in law enforcement that we cannot take it personally. When someone becomes upset with us, we have to listen, and we should listen, and we should take that interaction and make it a positive. We have to do that. So we have to continue to be transparent. We will continue to be transparent here. Let's look at our vision statement. It's simply put. You hear us continually say this, and this is not a vision statement that Chief Humphrey wrote. This is a vision statement that staff wrote. And we talked about it. We talked about what is our vision, what do we need, where do we want to go. We knew what we were doing, but we needed to know the citizens and the nation and the state needed to know where we're trying to go. And it's simply put, the vision of our Little Rock Police Department family, and notice I say family, because we are, is to serve as a model for policing by embracing and perfecting the principles of the 21st century policing pillars through collaboration, which we're doing here today, with our diverse community partners. And that's not necessarily, we're not just talking about our community members. We're talking about law enforcement, business, anyone who lives here in Little Rock or who works here in Little Rock, who operates here in Little Rock. We want to partner. We will strive to make the city of Little Rock one of the safest cities in both the state and the nation. That will happen. There's no doubt in my mind that will happen. It will happen. It's not going to happen overnight, but it will happen. So let's just kind of move forward about our partnerships, how this is going to work, how we're going to make Little Rock the safest city in the state and one of the safest cities in the nation. Well, we're going to focus on the 6 pillars of 21st century policing. I would ask if any of you all have not become familiar with that process, I would ask each and every one of you all to read that 21st Century Policing Initiative that was established in 2015. That was a roadmap that we will never do law enforcement the way we've done it in the past. This is a new era in the law enforcement profession. And basically, simply put, our community is going to be asking us questions. Our community should ask us questions. Our community must ask us questions. We must ask ourselves questions. But the first time in the history of law enforcement, and this is really the third major project or philosophy or program that's been researched regarding law enforcement. One in 1929, one in 1965, and then in 2015. But this is the first time in the history of law enforcement that we focused on officer wellness and also a guardian mindset, which basically means emotional intelligence for officers to understand what our responsibilities are and what our community expects from us. And that guardian mindset of, hey, we can partner with people and we don't always have to have a chip on our shoulder. That's what this 21st Century Policing Initiative is about. But it talks about stronger community engagement. This is it. This is where it starts. I guarantee you, events like this lead to bigger events. It leads to more feedback from the community. It leads to more engagement from our community. It leads to us being a better police department, a better community, because there are going to be questions that you all are going to ask that I may not even be able to answer, but it's going to force me or cause me to want to go and look at and do the research so I can provide you with a competent response. But we've got to have trust. And in order to have trust, we have to communicate. Might not like what I say, I might not like what you say, but at the end of the day, this is where we live. This is where we work. This is where we raise our children. This is where our grandkids will be living. This is where our business is. We have to trust each other. And it can't be everybody else's problem. It has to be the problem of everyone sitting in this room, everyone living in the homes here, the apartments here, occupying businesses. It has to be everyone's problem. We have to trust each other. But trust isn't going to happen overnight. If we slowly gain trust in each other, I think we're on that right track. It's going to continue to get better. I'm an optimist. I truly believe that. Maintaining a decrease in overall crime with an emphasis in violent crime. As a chief of police, I have it's an honor and a privilege to be selected to be the person who is ultimately responsible for the entire safety of over 200,000 individuals. That's an honor, and I have a responsibility. My responsibility is to make sure every day that our men and women of the Little Rock Police Department are engaging, are having those engaging conversations and those partnerships with our local, federal, state agencies, that I'm having these difficult conversations and these very proactive conversations with members of our community. The fact of that I never sleep. And if you don't believe me, ask some of the command staff about the 2 a.m. text emails and things that they get. And I tell you, my assistant chiefs will ask, man, do you ever go to bed? No, I don't, because I'm always thinking on how do we keep this community safe? What can I do to help guide this department in keeping the city safe? But I take it personally. Anytime you lose any item from your home, anytime you have damaged property that was other than an accident that's intentional, but I specifically take it personally when we lose a life. That's my responsibility. My responsibility, if someone loses a family member, I lost a family member, because life is precious. And so now you're putting me in a position to reduce this, but however, another person lost their life. Man, I tell you, that is rough. That's a rough feeling to get that phone call. But at the end of the day, just to know that the men and women of this department are working 24/7, 365 to ensure that we are attempting to reduce those chances of anyone in this room, anyone out in the community, anyone who visits this city of becoming a victim of a violent crime. As you all know, we did implement a no-knock warrant policy. We reviewed it. This is something that was initiated prior to me arriving. Captain Ken Temple and the assistant chiefs worked very diligently in coming up with this policy. Mayor Scott, our local judicial partners worked together to ensure that we had a policy that the community was well aware of and that we could follow. We tightened up our checks and balances. Not to say that we were doing anything wrong initially. There's always room for improvement, but anytime that you can understand that you see that you can do things better and you work on doing that, that's an accomplishment. So I think that also helps us bring some credibility to our department. The other one is gauging community through our quarterly meetings. Tomorrow night, next week, we have quarterly statistical meetings at each of our police substations. The community comes in, we talk about what's going on in these areas. We let them actually see in real time what the crime stats look like and the initiatives that we are taking to reduce the crime. They have input, so they actually know, and they can actually carry this information back out to their neighbors. And so now the neighbors and the residents want to become involved and say, well, if they're doing this, then how do we get involved? So this has been a really, really good program that the department has been doing for years. And we're going to continue to do this, and we're going to continue to enhance it, and the citizens look forward to it. Expansion of technology, our technological footprint. You cannot reduce crime without the data. You've got to have the proper technology and be able to understand what the data is in order to know what resources you need to deploy to areas. And we're looking at different things. We're looking at different technologies, different techniques in order to be cutting edge, in order to, in our efforts to become the safest city in the state and one of the safest cities in America. You'll hear us talk about, and you'll hear me talk about, and the department talk about in the upcoming months and weeks, DDACS, data-driven approaches to crime and traffic safety. The men and women of the command staff just sit through a 2-day workshop on DDACS, which is it's a national highway safety program which helps you to understand and locate and identify certain crime trends, traffic trends, and other actions that could drive your crime rate. So we're looking at that. We're looking at implementing that technology. And then finally, we've got to expand our victims advocacy programs. This is very important. We have to let the citizens know that if they are victims, that we do have a program that helps them on the road to recovery, helps them on the road to becoming stronger and more resilient. And so we are looking at ways to expand our victims advocacy programs within the department and also outside of the department. So I just wanted to kind of share some things, my vision, things that we're working on inside the department, things that you will hear us talk about on a regular basis, things that I want you all to hold me as the police chief accountable for. And I think you sit back and you'll see the hard work that we're doing. And so at this time, I would like to present two of my division commanders, Captain Ken Temple and Captain Russell King.
Well, good morning. I consider it an honor to be able to sit up here and talk to you about two specific divisions in our efforts to address violent crime, and want to highlight some of the programs that we have initiated. I'm Captain Temple. I'm over the Special Investigations Division, and my colleague Rusty King is over major crimes. I think you all are going to be very surprised and happy to see some of the initiatives that we've taken since the Power Ultra Lounge that we think is going to very effectively help us deter some of the violent crime that's going on. And we have researched best practices across the country, and we have developed through technology several programs that we're going to go over. As y'all are aware, the July 1st of 2017, the Power Ultra Lounge occurred there where 28 people were injured. That was a result of escalating gang violence and other types of issues that had happened across the city, that had been involved in several shootings, homicides. Unfortunate that happened that evening, but it was an impetus for the governor to request a coalition basically to be built to where we could kind of address that. But I'd be remiss to not at least say, please understand, the Little Rock Police Department has a long and very successful history of our TFOs being embedded with our federal partners. So we hope that always continues. But as a result of the Power Ultra Lounge, Governor Hutchinson called together this committee and they came up with GetRock. And GetRock was initially comprised of 9 law enforcement agencies and the U.S. Attorney, and they're listed up through here. We have since added North Little Rock, so they are now actively a part of the GetRock community. Now, GetRock is coordinated out of the FBI office. Ms. Upchurch, are you in here? Okay, she's not. I can tell you, I've been to several meetings there. The synergy that those guys have, ladies and gentlemen have, as far as addressing some of the issues that they want to correct is, I've never seen it happen before. I've watched Pulaski County Sheriffs, I've watched ASP, and I've watched Arkansas Community Corrections, the FBI, DEA, ATF, all collectively sit around tables to try to come up with different ways to address violent crimes, primarily gun crimes. Been very, very successful. One success is Operation Trailways, which is in February of 2018, last year. It was a combined effort where they arrested more than 40 significant high-risk offenders and gang members. They took a lot of people off the streets who, through intelligence-led, data-driven practices, were identified as being people causing problems. Since then, there are multiple waves that have been generated, and a wave is just an operation where they'll go out into the communities that have had an explosion of violence, or we have identified through intelligence-led practices that there are people out there that are shooters or they're causing the problems. They go out there, saturate those areas, particularly looking for those individuals. Been very, very successful in those too. One of the things that we've generated since then is the establishment of a gun crimes unit. And I'm very proud to say that Chief Bewley was the primary impetus behind allowing this to happen, because we had to take some manpower to do this. But the Gun Crimes Intelligence Unit has done some amazing things. It was established in March of 2018 as a result of a DOJ TIPS grant, and that's Technology and Police Service. And Ms. Karen Curry was very instrumental in helping us get this grant before we won that. It was about a $479,000 grant that we used to buy some technology enhancements. One is ShotSpotter, which I'm going to talk about into some success stories in a little bit, and the other is the IBM Analyst Notebook. And the IBM Analyst Notebook allows us to do social networking, not social media, social networking. And that's where we go in and we try to identify shooters or key people, find out who they associate with, find out where they associate with, so we can address them with resources into those in particular. And the other thing that we'll cover real quick is we recently submitted, once again, thanks to Ms. Curry, a grant for $800,000 that we hope that we will get awarded in October of this year, which will allow us to establish a regional gun crimes intelligence center. And that is very, very critical to us. Currently, we have an agreement with the Arkansas Crime Lab to where we use their lab. They've been very, very accommodating to us. But the Crime Lab closes on weekends and on holidays. This would allow us to have 24/7 access to be able to go out to crime scenes, collect the shell casings, be able to come in and then take those shell casings and enter them into an ATF NIBIN system, which I'll talk about just here in a second. But the mission of the gun crimes, as y'all all can see, to identify and target individuals who carry and use illegal guns, to reduce or prevent gun crimes and the associated violence through the development and production of time-sensitive, actionable intelligence. I cannot tell you how important that is. Time-sensitive, actionable intelligence. If we don't act on it in a timely manner, people move, drive away, leave. We need to be able to identify it very quickly so we can put a person with a gun or in a location. It also assists state and federal partners in their successful prosecution efforts of individuals involved in or associated with gun crimes. Is our U.S. Attorney representatives here? I guess not. Okay. Well, I can't tell you how much the U.S. attorneys have also. I've been told that last year, and it may be one or two off, but I think they were the third most in the country as far as adopting federal gun crimes. So they've done a great deal to try to identify individuals in the community and then have them prosecuted so we can get them off the streets. All right, our National Integrated Ballistic Information System, that's a long word, the acronym NIBIN. What that allows us to do is each gun, as a shell casing is extracted out through it, has a unique signature. So that allows us to go out to various shooting scenes, find those shell casings. We have trained NIBIN examiners who then can go in, triage those shell casings and look for that identical pattern. What does that do? It allows us to match those shells to particular guns. We find those shell casings in Southwest, Northwest, North Little Rock, or whatever else, since this is a national database. We enter those. If there's matches, it produces a lead. That lead is then submitted to Captain King's Major Crimes gun detectives, and it gives them actionable intelligence to be able to go out and possibly identify somebody. For example, if we make an arrest, somebody has a gun on it, we test fire that gun, the NIBINs comes back, entered into the ATF NIBIN system, comes back and says, this has been involved in 5 other shootings, one in Southwest, one in Pine Bluff, wherever else. We now can match that suspect with that gun to that scene, and that is evidence that they're going to use to try to submit that to the courts to get a prosecution. In 2017, prior to us implementing, we did 61 NIBINs. In 2018, we had 184. And in 2019, actually this needs to be updated with 712, but as of yesterday, we had 150. And we still got 4.5 months left to go. Now, that means 145 leads. We've probably done thousands and thousands and thousands of examinations of those individual shell casings to get these leads. But this is how important this does. This allows us to have quantifiable evidence to prove that this shell casing came from this gun. The Gun Crimes Intelligence Unit, I can tell you a couple successes, but I'll only list one. One case last year, we had 5 separate incidents where there were shots fired across the city. All of these shots were later were all tied together by NIBIN leads, and we subsequently arrested 3 individuals, and they were charged with capital murder. We couldn't have done that as fast if we hadn't had access to that NIBIN technology. It would not allow us to match those leads to the different areas of the city. So each was charged with capital murder, a terroristic act, aggravated assault, and firearms charges. And an additional benefit of that is the NIBIN leads were so significant that it allowed the U.S. attorneys to quickly adopt that and take that into the federal system. I'm going to segue over to Captain King now, but he's establishing a new gun crime unit. I can't begin to tell you the synergy we have between my gun crimes detectives and special investigations and his. They work daily back and forth as far as these crime scenes. Rusty.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm just going to touch real quickly on what we're trying to do, the logic behind it, and then what our hopes are. We'll talk a little bit about numbers, so we'll look at some stats here in just a second. But really for us, we see this as just the next logical step. Like Captain Temple said, this is something that occurs organically. It's something that we're doing already. It's just an opportunity for us to develop a team that is narrowly focused on gun-related crimes, and then they're dedicated to that. And you'll see as we walk through these sort of our goals, what that means to us. So again, as the chief mentioned, this stuff is predicated on our 21st century philosophy and pillars. Certainly on the technology piece, and then of course on the crime reduction. We believe this will be truly impactful. We're going to capitalize on the data and resources that are provided to us from the SID Gun Crimes Intelligence Unit. Certainly we're going to work closely with our federal and state partners and foster those relationships and helping us to seek prosecution, and on the investigative side as well. And then of course, we will coordinate I already talked, we talked briefly about the prosecution piece. So we'll talk about also some proactive pieces that we think we see opportunities for. And that is that we will dip down and get cases that we normally wouldn't necessarily see, and that would be criminal mischiefs that are gun-related. We think there's opportunities inside of there for us to identify and preempt some individuals or offenders that could cause us problems down the road. We'll look quickly at our numbers. It may be a little confusing, so if you look at the top of the slide there, you'll see that we're looking at a total of 4 years. We go back to July 15. I think the big takeaway from it is that 11% overall decrease in violent crime. It means that we're getting something right. We think we know what we're doing right. We think that it is this collective effort. That aggravated assault, that's the majority of our numbers, and what exists inside of there are these shootings, these terroristic acts that we're talking about, these battery first. All these gun-related things are inside of those charges. It's also worth note that when we report these numbers, we report on the NIBRS reporting protocol. So it means that we are reporting a higher, so let's take, for example, a terroristic act. If you shoot into a house that has 6 people in there, that counts as 6 offenses. That's the appropriate way to report that, and so it causes that number to drive higher. But it does show a good picture as to what we're dealing with as far as offenses go. This breakdown here just shows us across again, going back to 15, we'll go across the monthly timelines, and you can see those numbers go up and down. Again, we're just walking through basically the same information broken down into a monthly. Then I'm going to get out of your way.
ShotSpotter is a technology that we purchased out of this TIPS grant. It became active December 18th of 2018. It was seasoned January 1st, 2018, I'm sorry, by all the gunfire and stuff that goes on celebratory for the New Year's. So our ShotSpotter guys told us that would probably be something that would help us, and it actually did. But ShotSpotter has been amazing for us as far as helping us solve some crimes and respond to some crimes to get assistance through there. But what basically it is, it provides immediate alerts outside of 911 calls. And we've been finding that we're seeing a little bit fewer 911 calls on these ShotSpotter areas because people know that ShotSpotter is going to go. As soon as the ShotSpotter activation is sent to a center in California where they analyze it, they then dispatch it to our CAD, and our officers are required to come out, canvass the area, hopefully go next door and ask people in the neighborhood if they heard anything. But we've been able to get a lot of shell casings and stuff as a result of that. The ShotSpotter activation also provides a precise location, including latitude, longitude, and street addresses. And that's pretty significant to us because in the past we would get shots fired called and they'd say it was somewhere down the block. This gives us a very, very specific area, and it usually can even identify it's in the backyard. So we can then send officers directly into there and not have them driving all through the neighborhood. It provides a number and exact time of rounds fired. It identifies fully automatic or high-capacity weapons. It identifies multiple shots and weapons. It identifies the shooter position, speed, and direction of travel. And we have been able to hear some of the shootings going on in cars, and you can hear that as they go down. It provides detailed forensic data for investigation, prosecution, analysis, and it is easily accessible, single and cumulative historical reports. I can tell you a couple of the success stories on ShotSpotters. We had one individual that was shot, was no 911 call on it at all. We arrived on scene. The individual was alive. I believe he lived, how long?
A couple of days.
A couple of days, but we were able to get MEMS into there and actually get him to the hospital. Unfortunately, he died a couple of days later. And then another success story where we were actually no calls at all to the area. ShotSpotter activated, we went and we found a deceased individual. Now that's important because if ShotSpotter activation hadn't captured that, it may have been days before somebody had called that in, and the evidence that we could do, and also removing the body, would have been hampered. Can't say enough good things about it. I hope that we continue it. it's been very valuable as far as some of the prosecution things too. With that, are there any questions of our group up here?
Got one back there, Ken.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Do you have a question?
Terroristic act and murder convictions, how long has that been going on? Because I think, I may have had a, client or an inmate had, I think that they brought him back, I think after I murdered 10 or 12, he's lived in there now 12 years, brought him back and gave him terroristic charges after he had murder convictions. So how long has that been going on?
I'm not sure that I understand your question. When you ask about
Being brought back from, you're already convicted of murder, and you're brought back to court or brought back,
Sure,
whatever that means, and you pick up terroristic charges.
sure.
And how long has that been going on?
Unfortunately, I don't know the facts and circumstances around that case in particular. Don't know if the additional charges are related to something separate or if they're actually related to that initial incident that you're talking about.
And the shots spotter, we called, I think, July 4th, and when you give the information, is that out now? Shot spot, shot spotter?
You're asking about data that was generated as a result of ShotSpotter activation.
July 4th, there were shots, a lot of them, and then distinguishing them from the recreational, fire things for 4th of July.
The fireworks.
Yeah.
The-
So you were able to distinguish that. Were there any calls that you
I can get-
know of on the 4th? I know I called, and I know that
Ma'am,
they were done.
we'll get with you and get your specifics. We capture that data as far as if you called, did we respond, and I can get that for you. I can tell you the ShotSpotter has technology that allows them to monitor whether it's a firework, a backfire of a car, and if it is, then it's not dispatched to our CAD system. It doesn't tie our units up to where they're being busy. That's one of the great things about that. It differentiates between fireworks and actual gunfire. But I'll get your name and I'll be able to call you later to ask, was there an officer report generated for that?
At our neighborhood connection meeting, there was one FBI female agent, and she came to talk to us about sex trafficking. Is it limited to one FBI agent, or we have many, and we have that kind of a situation in Arkansas? I know they have it in Tennessee, East Tennessee.
I don't know how many the FBI has. We have 2 ICAC, which is Internet Crimes Against Children, assigned that are TFOs that work out of my office. So Chief Humphrey has allowed us to have 2 dedicated fully to doing human trafficking, crimes against children, and that type of stuff. I don't know how many are actual FBI agents, but we have 2 Little Rock Task Force officers.
On those 2 success stories that you mentioned, were there arrests made by use of the ShotSpotter?
Not on the 2 mentioned stories, but yes, we have made arrests on ShotSpotter activations related to homicides.
So how were those success stories?
I misunderstood your question.
How were those 2 success stories if you didn't arrest a suspect?
The Captain Temple covered the fact that on one of them, it enabled us to get a statement from our victim, which could help us potentially in solving the crime. Additionally, on the other, it enabled us to collect evidence that we may not have otherwise been able to collect. Yes, sir. Any other questions? I don't know.
Is this for this group only?
I was going out to the county jail every Tuesday and Thursday. The age group that I was visiting was from 15 to 17, 18 to 21. If I heard this word once, I heard it several times, and I want to know, how would you deal with the word or the action retaliation? If I heard that once, I heard it several times. This is what's going on out there in the street, retaliation. And I'm saying to these guys, that doesn't make sense to me, but they could not give you a reasonable explanation. So how would you guys deal with retaliation?
I think the statement pertains to shootings that are related to retaliation. Is that what you're asking? Yes, sir. That's a real and actual fact, and that is something that we work on every single day. And it's one of the drivers behind the creation of the violent gun crimes team. We think that we can do a better job of talking to our victims and our witnesses and developing more information that is retaliation based. Yes, ma'am.
About tattoos, are you going by tattoos for gang? How are you determining whether they're gang members? Besides tattoos, and do we have tattoo training?
I think that you're asking, do we use those tattoos that the individual has to determine if they're a gang member or not? Is that what you're asking? That is a component of an overall assessment. Often, we will have an interview with that individual who will identify themselves as a gang member.
All right, we've been told we're out of our time, but if there's any other questions, of course, we'll be here with the mayor and the rest of the staff for the rest of the day.
Good morning. I'm Wayne Bewley, Assistant Chief of Police for the Little Rock Police Department. And I got to tell you, I've had the pleasure for about the last 3.5, 4 years to work with both Captain Temple and Captain King, and their leadership and the work that they're doing in both the gun crimes intel unit through the Special Investigations Division and in the investigative side through our Major Crimes Division is outstanding and much appreciated. So thank you guys for your leadership. It's now my pleasure to introduce Ron Teachman. He's the Director of Public Safety Solutions for ShotSpotter. Ron is going to give a brief presentation on ShotSpotter. Just a very brief comment about Mr. Teachman. He is a former Chief of Police in 2 cities. He has over 38 years of law enforcement experience. Also, it's relevant to point out that he's a former client of ShotSpotter, as in both cities that he was the chief of police in. He actually installed a ShotSpotter in both of these cities. After retirement, then came to work for ShotSpotter. And Ron, I will turn it over to you.
Good morning. I'd like to begin by telling you a story. Tonight in Little Rock, it is likely in some neighborhood there'll be gunfire. The noise will startle and awaken a woman from her sleep. A single mother. She gets out of bed, steps into her slippers and puts on her robe. She walks down the hallway and checks on her children in their bedroom. Comforts a child that's crying, who's awakened by the gunfire also. She hears a car screech and some yelling, and then at some point, she goes to the window and discreetly looks through the blinds, waiting to see a Little Rock squad car. And what happens or doesn't in those next few minutes will determine her perception of her personal safety, the safety of her children and her family, and her perception of the Little Rock Police Department and this administration. Thank you for the introduction, Assistant Chief Bewley. I'm here on behalf of my colleagues Wes Amberboy and John Reisenhover. And in my next few minutes, I'm going to take you through 3 main chapters quickly. Detect, Protect, Connect. ShotSpotter, as you heard, detects gunfire, distinguishes fireworks and backfire and other noises, and gives a specific location to where the shooting took place in seconds. We protect the police so they can better protect the community. And we connect the police to the crime scene and connect the police to the community, which is very important. But before I get into how it works and what it does, just want to spend a couple of brief seconds on why. Why was this technology brought to Little Rock, and why is it being considered for expansion? And as I go through my comments as well, looking back on comments by the chief about the 21st century pillars, we think we address each of the 6 of the 21st century pillars. So rhetorically, what is your perception of gun violence in Little Rock? We know from the research we've done with our 100 clients across the country that gun violence is not just homicides. In fact, on average, across our client base in the ShotSpotter coverage areas, there are far more non-fatal shootings than homicides, about a 10-to-1 ratio, which is why I'll just say, although it's concerning that the homicide rate has gone up in Little Rock recently, to see the ag assaults, which includes non-fatal shootings, on the decline is a very positive step. So congratulations. But 10-to-1 ratio in general, 129 shooting incidents and almost 400 bullets spent for every homicide. We also know that it's a handful of people that are driving us crazy in every city that there's gun violence. A handful. And quickly what happens is they buy a gun on the street, they don't go to a gun store because of their criminal record. And as those red dots indicate, they shoot at the time of purchase, there's no warranty with a street gun. They shoot at stop signs and stationary objects for marksmanship. They shoot to let the neighbors know, to intimidate. They shoot at their rival gang members or group members with intent to kill and miss, shoot with intent to kill and wound, and ultimately shoot with intent to kill and kill. So the answer seems simple. Stop the homicide, stop the non-fatal shootings, have an intervention with the shooter early on. But here's the problem. How do the police know when someone's shooting a gun? Do they get some special notice in the sky? No. They need the community to call. It's very unlikely that a police officer is going to witness someone shooting a gun. Very unlikely. They need the community to call. And as sophisticated as our 911 system is, and as great as the people are that work in the 911 system, the weak link is the community not calling. In fact, nationally, the average is about 20% or less. And it's hovering right around that here in Little Rock from the data that I've seen. And when people do call, they don't have specifics about how many shooters are involved, how many rounds are fired, is there an injured person, because they're calling from their home, which may be some distance away. And it's delayed. So with all that, why don't good people, law-abiding citizens here in Little Rock, call the police? They tell us, we're not sure if it was gunfire. I don't want to call about fireworks and think it was gunfire and send a false alarm. I assume someone else would call. I'm afraid that the shooter or the shooter's group is going to see the squad car at my door. Why would I call? I never see a police officer. But back to her. She's expecting to see a police response. She's expecting to see a Little Rock squad car. But for all the reasons I just mentioned, she's not going to see one, most likely, with just 911. Is her expectation reasonable? I submit that it is. Police project an aura of omniscience. Click at a ticket, drive sober, get pulled over. I was a chief 8 years. I didn't go to too many community meetings and say, CSI? Nah, we don't have that stuff. We project competency because we think there's deterrent value in that. But she doesn't know that. She thinks the police know. And if she thinks the police know and they don't show, what does she conclude? They don't care. And to the officers in the room, she's saying that you don't care. That's a false understanding, but you can see the logical pathway. In our failure to respond, I say I still bleed blue, to respond comprehensively to every gunshot deteriorates our community policing and our collaborative efforts. Beyond that, if mother thinks the cops don't care, if the family adopts that mentality, that goes to the next generation and affects quality of life. Doesn't let her kids go out and play after school, keeps them in the house, keeps them in the yard. Not even to use the playground across the street. And is he too young to be recruited by the gangs and groups in Little Rock? Not at all. And if family thinks the cops don't care because they don't respond, that's fertile ground for gang recruitment. Finally, and I'm being brief, there's not just a psychological harm when children are exposed to violence and trauma, there's a physiological effect on brain development. It's called adverse childhood experiences. It doesn't have to be like this in any city in America, and certainly not here in Little Rock. So how do we help build this model of trust? We're ShotSpotter. And for those of you that I gave my business card to, and I have plenty more to distribute after my comments, on the back of our business card is our purpose: earn the trust of law enforcement, to help them provide equal protection for all and strengthen the police-community relationship, ultimately reducing gun violence. So the 3 chapters that I mentioned: detect, protect, connect. Let me begin with detect. How does it work? Bear with me, I have a 3-minute video that explains.
A gun is fired somewhere in your city. So what happens now? In the past, there was a slim chance the shooter would be reported to police at all. Even when it was, it took precious time, and there was often confusion regarding the location of the shooting and other pertinent information. At least that's how things were. ShotSpotter has changed all that. By utilizing advanced technology honed over 2 decades, we have automated the process. We monitor gunfire activity 24/7. So if a gun is fired in any area within ShotSpotter coverage, the system detects, locates, and immediately alerts police of the gunshot. So how does it work? It starts with acoustic sensors that are placed on buildings and lampposts throughout a neighborhood. If a gun is fired anywhere in the area, multiple sensors detect and timestamp the sound. The precise location of the gunshot is determined based on the amount of time it takes for the sound of the gunshot to travel to each individual sensor, effectively triangulating the sound. The exact location of the detected gunshot is indicated by a dot on a map. Once an alert is generated, it is immediately sent to our IRC, or Incident Review Center, where trained acoustic experts then analyze each incident in mere seconds, determining if the sound is gunfire. ShotSpotter acoustic analysts receive extensive training on reviewing and classifying gunfire by distinguishing gunshots from other impulsive sounds that are not gunshots. In addition, they are trained to append additional contextual information, such as multiple shooter alerts or full automatic weapons alerts, that can prove to be essential tactical intelligence for law enforcement agencies responding to these crimes. The entire transaction takes place in less than 60 seconds. With the real-time ShotSpotter alerts, police can immediately dispatch to the scene. Utilizing the gunfire audio clip and the tactical information, officers can approach an exact location quickly and safely to engage the shooter, interview witnesses, and collect key evidence at the crime scene. ShotSpotter's Respond app enables patrol officers to receive real-time alerts quickly and effectively to their patrol car, on MGTs, or on the go on their smartphones. The ShotSpotter alert system is used in more than 90 cities and is an invaluable tool to help make communities safer by responding to gunshot incidents faster, making it easy to find evidence and reducing the risk for police officers.
The easiest way to understand the science, although it's far more sophisticated than what I'm about to say, we work by measuring the speed of sound as it hits the different sensors. And you all know from childhood the speed of sound is slow. How do you know that? Think about being a child when there was lightning and thunder. And a parent or grandparent said, "Don't be afraid. Count the seconds from the time that you see the lightning until you hear the roll of the thunder." It's actually about 4.5 seconds on average for a gunshot to travel a mile. And we populate the coverage area with sensors that measure to the millisecond and timestamp when they detected the impulse. And then they triangulate or multilaterate to determine the location of the shooter, as you saw in the video. All that data is sent to a home office in Silicon Valley, in a city called Newark, California, where trained acoustic technicians look at the acoustic signature of the impulse, look at the sensor participation for direction, listen to the audio once, twice, or thrice. And that process, on average, as you heard, takes about 30 to 45 seconds from trigger pull to notify the police that there's been gunfire. Sometimes they get a second opinion, and then they publish what we call a qualified alert. That's how it works to keep our community safe. and protect the police so they can protect the community. Here's what happens when you don't have ShotSpotter. Someone fires a gun. Maybe 1 out of 5 times, someone calls the police, but they're not at the scene. They're a block or 2 away. And they call 911 and say, I think I heard a noise that might be gunfire. The call taker and dispatcher take the information. Here's our officer on patrol. Where are we going to send the officer? The only location we have with 911 is the caller's address. So we put our officer possibly in harm's way and drive right by the crime scene, perhaps, to meet with the caller. The ShotSpotter says, what if, instead, we bring our technology here to Little Rock? Now the officer would get an audible alert on their laptop or desktop, on a tablet, a phone, or even a watch. And it would direct them to that appliance, and they'll see and hear what you're about to see and hear. We would publish the audio that we captured on that gunfire incident. As you can see, that little bubble, little balloon, has 7. That's the round count, as Captain Temple explained. Give a satellite view of the location. But here's what's really nice for officer safety as well. What if that officer is not acquainted with that neighborhood? They're working overtime, they're back up another officer. That's not their beat, so to speak. Well, see that little blue icon? You just push that, and it takes you to Street View Google Maps, and the officer can become fully acquainted with the crime scene they're about to go to before they leave where they're dispatched from. Here's another example. What if someone called 911 and said, I think I hear fireworks. There couldn't have been gunfire, there are just too many noises. Would you please have someone check it out? Well, indeed, in this instance, it wasn't fireworks. ShotSpotter determined it was gunfire. In fact, gunfire from multiple shooters, one of whom had a high-capacity weapon. We would also tell you it was full automatic. But notice the overhead. You see the railroad tracks and the T intersection? By going to Street View Google Maps, you can see that it's an overhead railroad bridge. We're not going to send 1 officer looking for fireworks. We're going to send at least 4 officers so we can put 1 on each end of that bridge, and 2 at least at street level, to deal with the level of threat of multiple shooters. All that information gets published to their cell phones as well. They can see cumulatively what has occurred. They can see that incident with the 7 rounds, and they can even get navigation tools. So now with ShotSpotter, officer on patrol, we go directly to the situation. And if there's a caller, we deal with the caller telephonically. Officers can look at their app and determine what's occurred in the last 24 hours, 3 days, or 7 days. And administration, including the chief, can look at cumulatively what's occurred over the last 24 hours, 3 days, and 7 days, and deploy their resources strategically. Again, this is data-driven, intelligence-led policing. And that's how we protect. And finally, on Connect. Because we get you to the right crime scene immediately, we increase your chances of getting testimonial and forensic evidence. You've already heard about the attributes of NIBIN. NIBIN is wonderful technology, but you have to be able to get to the crime scene and find that evidence. And CGIC, Crime Gun Intelligence Center workflows are very effective, but only if you get to the scene and collect the evidence. Notice number 1, comprehensive collection. The fingerprint system works exceptionally well because everyone's fingerprints go into a database. NIBIN works best when you have comprehensive collection. And again, we tell you where and when. We integrate with other technologies, CAD, RMS, video management system, license plate readers, real-time crime centers, even UAVs and drones, as well as GPS monitoring. And because we allow or encourage our clients to share the data, such as with school officials, children are exposed to trauma. We want to get them clinical care, trauma-informed care. We know that children witness violence. So taking the data, sharing it with school officials, gives us that opportunity for trauma-informed care. Now, our clients measure outcomes and outputs. We prefer to see outcomes. Notice the middle one is New York City with the heart. They're looking at community trust and community engagement, and that's what they talk about, even though they've had record reductions in violence in New York City, for example. But back to her, and I'm moving to close. Now with ShotSpotter, she will see a police response. She'll see a response fast enough to make an arrest, treat victims and stabilize them for transport, because we know time is tissue, and with ShotSpotter we increase the likelihood of survivability and reduction of trauma in a shooting incident. But then police will do what they do, set up the crime scene, talk to witnesses, and gather forensic evidence. But we train them and encourage them to go one more step. Before you leave the crime scene, before you take down that yellow tape, knock on doors and ring doorbells, a couple of houses in every direction. And that woman that was looking out the window, she'll answer her doorbell, even though it's 3 in the morning. And the conversation, we hope it goes something like this. Ma'am, I'm sorry if I woke you. I realize the hour. But I'm guessing those gunshots next door woke you. I saw your bedroom light was on. Are you okay? Officer Bewley and I are here because we care about you and your family. Do you have children at home? Were they awakened by the gunfire? Do they need to speak to a police officer to feel safe tonight? We don't want your son or daughter sleeping in a bathtub because they were afraid to sleep in their own bed because their bedroom wall faces that house next door. Don't be alarmed if you see flashlights for the next few minutes. We're going to be checking to make sure that no stray bullet hit your house or your car, that no one's hiding under your porch or hiding in your car. We're not going to leave your property tonight to assure that you and your family are safe. I can see you're apprehensive to talk to me right now. Don't be alarmed. We're going to be checking with all your neighbors, not just you. But here's my business card. My name is Ron Teachman. My cell phone number and email address are on my business card. Please give me a call later and tell me more about what's happening in your neighborhood or on your street so I can be a better guardian for you and your family. At ShotSpotter, we want to change the narrative in cities like Little Rock from the police don't care to the police are there. They're there for you. And create a new positive normal where no amount of gun violence, no gunfire is acceptable. We appreciate the opportunity to work with the Little Rock Police Department to make this community safer. We're ShotSpotter, and together we can detect the gunfire, we can protect this community, we can connect the police to the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. I appreciate the presentation and your partnership with the Little Rock Police Department and ShotSpotter. We truly appreciate that. We'll now have a presentation from Mrs. Karen Curry, who is a grants manager for the City of Little Rock. Karen, for many years, was a leader in criminal justice reform while serving as the state's prosecutor coordinator, and for over 40 years has been going after and managing grants. So, Karen.
Thank you so much, Chief Bewley. While we're getting the PowerPoint back up, I'm going to go ahead and launch in. One of the very most important things that you can do in getting and obtaining grants is to be a good steward of the grants that you have. And so one of the most important things right now for the, one of the most important things right now that people can do if you're wanting grant money is to learn about evidence-based programs. Why make them evidence-based? And what that essentially means is just that the, you got me ready? Okay. What that essentially means is that it is going to be something that is pretty well true. If you have a new drug that is coming onto the market, you want that drug tested and you want it to do what it is actually saying that it's going to do. The same in grants. If a funding agency is going to be giving away grant money, then they want the project to proceed and have success, and then actually, and on top of that, they want it to be able to do what it is supposed to do, and not just be throwing money at a problem and having the people that are running the program feel good about what they're doing. The last thing right now that we're really hearing a lot about is collaboration. And the feds are definitely pushing collaborate, collaborate, collaborate. So with that said, one of the things that the City of Little Rock has applied for recently is a body-worn camera grant. And please note that this is a body-worn camera implementation and policy. So that the United States Department of Justice just does not want to give away money in order to put cameras on law enforcement officers. They instead want to go through an evidence-based procedure. They want to follow a best practice. And what they have found by funding this through the years is that you really need to do it in a certain way. So at this point in time, the Department of Justice has come up with a toolkit. It's on the internet. You can go on and take a look at it. And it will say, okay, if you want to, if you're a police agency and you want to implement body-worn cameras, then here is the very best way to do this. And they have a checklist that the city is actually following, so that even though we may not get this grant, I'm got my fingers crossed, but I never like to count my chickens before they hatch. But even if we don't get this grant on the first go-round, we're still going to have learned a lot just going through the process, and we'll be in an even better place to be more competitive the next go-round. And as I said, this grant is incredibly competitive. A lot of the places that have received or that have cameras, they want more cameras for their particular city and for their officers. So there are a lot of people going to the well. I think we have positioned ourselves well, and we will continue to do so. So I'll have copies of this implementation checklist out on the desk during the break. One of the things that is so important too that the Department of Justice wants departments to consider is what is in their actual policy. And so they have a listing of things that they want in it before the Department of Justice will fork out the money in order to purchase the cameras. They will want to have reviewed our particular policy, what all is in it. They also are going to require us to attend seminars where they do talk about the best practices. The Department of Justice has also recorded all of their previous sessions, and those are out on the internet already, and I'm very proud to say that LRPD has had someone watch every single one of them already. So LRPD is all over taking a look at this particular toolkit. So we will find out whether or not we are in a position to receive some grant money along toward the last week in September, first part of October. Next one that I'm very excited to start working on will be some projects involving domestic violence. We have a lot of challenges in that particular area. There are a large number of grants that are out there that deal with this issue. One of those grants used to be known as a pro-arrest grant, so it is a comprehensive grant that not only works with law enforcement on helping them to do some additional domestic violence investigations and that sort of thing, but it also addresses the prosecution side as well as, of course, with the victims, or as the folks working in domestic violence would say, with the survivors. So one of the main grants on that one is due in February. Crime Victim Services, I think the Chief talked about his desire to expand on that. We have filed some grants on that. We have been told really good chance that we're going to get them, but we're not going to know exactly what for a while. The last time we were awarded this, we found out the last week in August, and the grants will start back up again in October. There is, as of yesterday, the Department of Justice has put out now a word that they're going to open up grant solicitations for community police officers. We've not had a chance to talk with the Chief and with the Mayor about this one, but we have had these grants before. They do require a lot of match, so there's going to have to be a tremendous amount of study as to whether or not the city actually wants to apply for those. If we do get them, we could get up to 15 officers, but as many of you know, it's on a sliding scale basis. Typically, the first year, the Department of Justice will allow payments from them for 75% of an officer's salary and benefits, and then the next year it's reduced down to 50%, and then the year after that is 25%. There's also kind of a wild card in criminal justice. It's a grant there that's known as Innovations in Criminal Justice. And those grants will be due next May, so we're hopeful to come up with a very good, viable project for that particular grant. Captain Temple talked about, too, our efforts and how we really want to get what is known as a crime gun grant. That would, for us, be a continuation of our TIPS grant and the Gun Crimes Intelligence Unit, which would have in it a continuation of the ShotSpotter and some of our social network analysis software. It, too, requires a phenomenal amount of collaboration, and that is what is making the program successful. That grant, by the way, is incredibly, just absolutely incredibly competitive. So they typically only award about 8 of them to different size public safety. I'm sorry, my words are lacking, to police. And so we won't find out about that one again either until October the 1st. Some more things that we're working on. Every year the department or the City of Little Rock receives a Justice Assistance Act grant. We get that particular money based on population. We have put in for some bulletproof vest grant money. We'd like to return and receive some additional internet crimes against children funding, selective traffic enforcement, working on some DUI. And so with that, thank you very much.
Well, good morning once again. It's my honor and my privilege to introduce one of our community partners from the Department of Justice Community Relations Services Division, Miss Cynthia Taylor. I met Cynthia I've known Cynthia for nearly 20 years, formerly related in regards to her work in the Dallas area as it relates to community services through the Department of Justice. And so, as you all know, we've been talking about our Citizens Review Board. And so I reached out to Cynthia 2 years ago when I was in Norman, and Cynthia has been an amazing asset, amazing partner to work with. And I will tell you that in our community events, she just basically was able to answer questions really without her, just really basically through her presentation. Very professional, very passionate, and so we couldn't think of a better person to come and explain the purpose of a Citizens Review Board. And it's a great honor that I introduce Ms. Cynthia Taylor.
Thank you, Chief. And I am thrilled to be here with you today. Again, my name is Cynthia Taylor. I'm the Regional Director for the Department of Justice Community Relations Service for both the Southwest region and the Rocky Mountain region. And again, Chief, I've had the pleasure of working with you for many years, and I have to say that the Chief is very forward-thinking when it comes to police community relations. I also want to thank the Mayor as well for not only embracing, but expanding on the ideas, concepts, and programs that we brought to him. And so we're thrilled to be a part of working with you and moving forward with your Citizens Review Board. Now, the Department of Justice Community Relations Service is a federal agency that is known as the peacemaker for community conflicts and tensions arising from the differences in race, color, and national origin. Also, we work with communities dealing with gender, gender identity, disabilities, and religion. We were created in 1964 under the Civil Rights Act, and we're the only federal component that works with public and private organizations to resolve racial tension on the basis of the categories I had mentioned a moment ago. Now, CRS does not prosecute or litigate or assign blame. We don't represent either sides. We're a neutral third party, and our services are free, voluntary for those parties who participate in our services because we don't have the ability to enforce laws. And our goal is to build and strengthen police-community relationships and partnerships. We've been instrumental throughout the country because we have 15 offices across the country that establish partnerships, advisory boards, police community relations boards, ministerial alliances, and working groups. These programs are different for each and every community that we work with. But one of the common things among all the programs that we put together are that they build trust, and that's important for each and every community. Why establish a citizens review board or a police community relations board or something of that nature? It's because it gives a voice to the community. It creates partnerships between law enforcement and the communities that they serve. It formalizes a way to give and receive information, and certainly serves as a good faith effort on the part of law enforcement and city officials. It gives the community an opportunity to gain an understanding about police policies and procedures, and it's an educational process for the community as well. Now, the Community Relations Service, CRS, our agency, has engaged to put these partnerships together across the country, and we've been very successful with that. And we've provided these similar services in crisis and conflict situations where there's been loss of life, where there's been a long history of issues between community members and law enforcement. And we're thrilled to be a resource here in Little Rock as you move forward with establishing your Citizens Review Board. We will continue to help. Again, our services are cost-free, and we'll come back as many times as necessary to help implement and move forward the process that you're working with. And again, we look forward to serving you in any way that we can. Thank you.
So I hope this has been very informative. I think we've all learned something. I hope if you haven't, maybe had your any specific questions answered. We have the experts here, and they can provide any updated information, or we can provide that information to you at a later date. So at this time, the community part of our summit is adjourned. Feel free. Finish enjoying the refreshments and feel free to ask questions. And I think the mayor may have something to say. I won't forget about the mayor.
This is one of those impromptu things, but I definitely, again, want to share with the community how much we appreciate those who took time out this morning to come hear about what the Little Rock Police Department is doing to make certain that the city of Little Rock is one of the safest cities in Arkansas as well as the United States. I want to definitely share our appreciation to our ShotSpotter representatives. Ron, you did a phenomenal job really showing how we are working to not only be tough on crime, but be smart on crime. And as we're being smart on crime, it gives us the opportunity to streamline services and be more effective with the resources that we have by utilizing technology and innovation. And that's something that as we begin to look at our budgeting practices, trying to figure out how we can continue to expand our technology and our innovation services with the ShotSpotter. This type of technology does cost money, but in the end game, when we are curbing crime, It helps us to become more economically vibrant because many people choose where they want to live based on the safety of their city. And we want more people to choose to live in the state's capital city. And by being a safe city and being a smart city as it relates to technology innovation, as it relates to crime and reduction of that crime. But we talked a lot of that today about the law enforcement side of public safety. I also want to take this time to recognize our brothers and sisters of the Little Rock Fire Department who've been here today watching patiently because they are a critical and integral part of public safety as well. We have our Pulaski County Sheriff, Eric Higgins, who's here today as well. It means a lot that you're here, and many of our federal partners that we've already acknowledged, and many of which will be a part of the roundtable discussion. So thank you so much for this opportunity for us to share with the community. As you begin to have more questions, please let us know because we want to make certain that we're being accountable, clear, and transparent, Little Rock Police Department and the City of Little Rock. To our City Board of Directors, thank you so much for being here today. I know Joan Adcock's here, Director Hendricks, Director Peck, Director Hines, Director Webb was here early, as well as Director Fortson and many others who have took time out their day and their schedule to focus on public safety and 21st century community policing. So thank you so much for the community part again. We're going to then go into a roundtable discussion with our state, county, and federal partners, and then come out of that particular discussion with a press conference sometime around 12:30 or 1 o'clock. So really, again, I want to share that appreciation as we move forward to continue to make the city of Little Rock the safest city in the state of Arkansas, as well as the South, and more importantly, maybe even the nation. I'll bring back Chief Humphrey. You always recognize one other person I have, not only my church member, but my state representative and the new minority leader, Frederick Love. Well, good afternoon. I'll be very brief. I think as we know, at the start of July, we named July Public Safety Month here in the city of Little Rock to make certain that our entire city knew how important public safety is to our administration, to our city, as we strive to become the safest city in Arkansas and the safest city in the United States. And so a part of Public Safety Month, we wanted to highlight our Public Safety Summit, where we focused on collaboration efforts, a concerted effort, and cooperation between state, federal, and county officials. Today that you have behind me is a demonstration of true partnership between law enforcement here in the city of Little Rock, Central Arkansas, and the state. From having our colonel of our Arkansas State Police to having the State Prosecutor's Office, the U.S. Attorney's Office, as well as members of the DA community, ATF, U.S. Marshals, and any just about partner that's a part of public safety in this city, this region, and this state. And this demonstrates our commitment of oneness, our commitment of unity, our commitment of making certain that not only are we tough on crime, but that we are smart on crime. And as we focus on building relationships and trust between the community as well as the law enforcement community, it strengthens that trust. So when there's an opportunity to curb crime, which is always an opportunity, that we are putting their best foot forward. And so I'm extremely proud to have these partners here today. But most importantly is we have to always show our admiration, our respect, and our honor to our law enforcement community, because they wake up each and every day to put their lives on the line to protect and serve the citizens of Little Rock, the region of Central Arkansas, and the state of Arkansas. And so on behalf of the city of Little Rock, I want to share my admiration and appreciation to each one of them for what they've done, what they continue to do to make certain that this city is the safest city in the state of Arkansas, and most importantly, hopefully, the United States. Going forward, we'll have Chief of Police Keith Humphrey, who will kind of share what's been going on the past several hours as we've had this summit of state, federal, and county officials here today. Chief Humphrey.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, and I want to take the time to thank all of our law enforcement partners on the federal level, state level, county, and local level. This couldn't be done without this collaboration. The one thing that you look at as a chief of police, what type of partnerships do you have within the community? You look at your private partnerships, but for most part, you look at your law enforcement partnerships, because we all have to work together. This isn't the law enforcement profession that it was 20 years ago. No one's doing their own thing. We're all doing a collaborative effort in order to make our community safe. What we wanted to show today to the citizens of Little Rock and to the citizens of the nation, that the city of Little Rock and the state of Arkansas really believes in this effort of being the safest city in the state and one of the safest cities in America. The only way we can do that is ongoing collaboration, realizing that we do have issues, realizing that we have to continue to fight those, to address those issues. I think some people believe that law enforcement works 8 to 5. I think they forget that just like criminals, on a proactive level and reactive level, we work 24/7, 365. The men and women of our organizations lose many a night's sleep trying to figure out how to keep our communities safe. And so the one thing that came out of this summit today was continuing collaborations, that no one's bigger, no law enforcement agency is larger than the other. I wish you could have just sit down and just heard some of the topics that came up with how can we continue to help each other? How do you know you're being successful? What will it take? We realize that the funding that was once provided to law enforcement is not going to be the same. So we have to come up with creative ideas, not really reinventing the wheel, just making sure the wheel is stronger and faster in order to address our concerns. We realize that we have to continue to our efforts to reduce violent crime. We understand that. We're committed to doing that. That is going to be not just a local law enforcement effort, but also a community effort. We are going to be transparent. You've heard me talk constantly about 21st century policing. And one of the two first proponents talks about transparency, and it talks about oversight and commitment. And so being able to get out into the community and sharing with the community what the issues are, why we need the help from the community, the importance of having help from the community is going to help us in our efforts. Number two, we're seeing a significant increase in our prosecutions, mainly in working with our federal partners. The word is getting out that if you come to the city of Little Rock, not only will you have the potential of facing state charges, but federal charges, which everyone knows has a harsher bearing on the crime that you commit. We're increasing our federal gun crime charges. That word is getting out. I can tell you that in speaking with staff and speaking with our federal partners, that's a message that a lot of these suspects are putting out there, is that, man, we're going to do Fed time. I wouldn't do some of the things that we've been doing because we're going to do federal time. The other thing is we have to continue the cooperation, and I have no doubt in my mind that we will continue to have the cooperation amongst the law enforcement agencies to continue to, not necessarily just from the chief's level or the special agent in charge or the CEO's level of any local law enforcement agencies, but the line level officers. The detectives, the first line supervisors and mid-managers are having these discussions. The other thing I think is very unique is that you're finding local government leaders, the mayors and city board of directors, they're having these discussions also. So it's an all-inclusive process. The other is that we really believe that we're hoping that we receive a grant that we applied for a regional intel center. We think that that's a big plus in helping us with our intelligence when it comes to violent crimes. It also comes back to, we have affirmation that, and you continue to hear me talk about collaboration, you continue to hear me talk about partnership. That was the main thing that was driven home in this summit at the round table. We want to continue to work together. We want to make each other better. And I'll say this again, it's not a single effort, it's a joint effort. And this is just an amazing process that I'm very proud to be a part of getting a commitment from the mayor. Although we do meet on a regular basis, whether it's quarterly, whether it's monthly, the Mayor Scott has assured us that we will do this on an annual basis. And I think this is a good thing for the city, it's a good thing for the partnerships, and it reassures our citizens that we are committed to reducing violent crime. And so at this time, If there are any questions, we'll entertain questions from the audience. Yes, ma'am.
Talk about the new Regional Gun Crimes Intel Center. Kind of tell us a little bit about what that would look like and how it would differ from CID's current gun crimes intelligence.
Okay, I'm gonna let Assistant Chief Wayne Bewley talk about that.
Sure. First of all, I'm for about the last 4 years, I've been over our investigative bureau, and recently with a change, Assistant Chief Hayward Finks is transitioning into that position. But having been there for about the last 4 years, sometime back we created our Little Rock Gun Crimes Intel Unit, which has detectives that work on, are NIBIN certified. We utilize a machine that is at the Arkansas State Crime Lab that everybody in the state uses. It's not always available. It's not 24 hours a day. It's not 7 days a week. And we feel that we've come to the point with our education, the training, and our ability to enter these NIBIN information, these leads, and produce the leads to our detectives, that we need our own system. And we think with the grant that we have out there that we hope to get, that'll allow us the opportunity to purchase our own NIBIN machine. And then with that, we will become a center for Central Arkansas area. That'll be 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, whether it's us, North Little Rock, Pulaski County. We have something significant that occur in the middle of the night, on the weekend. We can come out and operate that system right there out of Little Rock Police Department. So that's kind of the difference.
So it's making that investigative tool kind of available at any point for most people in this region, right?
Right.
Excellent.
So do we have that grant yet, or when do we find out if we get
It's supposed to be announced in October 1st. Very competitive grant, but we feel like we're in pretty good shape with the evidence-based that we've submitted for it.
With ShotSpotter, we specifically highlighted that today and talked about how useful of a tool it's been over the past couple of months. If we don't get that TIPS grant, will our current ShotSpotter go away, or will we, if we do get it, will we expand ShotSpotter's location, the range?
I think one thing I believe that we're going to find a way to maintain that resource. I mean, it's too valuable of a resource not to. And that we're always looking at ways to make the city safer and add technology throughout the city. So I think all of that's open. All of that's open. Whatever it takes. Even if the mayor has to pay that out of his own pocket, I think we're going
And that's where I'm going to step in. But here's the thing. One of the things that I know is the things that I don't know. And one of the things that when you realize that, you lean on those that are experienced, knowledgeable, and so in particular as it relates to law enforcement, first and foremost, we have a phenomenal team. And they've spent a lot of time figuring out different ways. How do we not only focus on being tough on crime, but how can we be smart on crime? And so we firmly believe one of those tools in the toolbox is ShotSpotter. It's helped us, and many times when our own constituents aren't allowing us to know that there have been gunshots in particular areas, that ShotSpotter is being that constituent for us. And so we've seen that it's been laser focused in a few mile radius, and we know that there are other cities that are our same size that have ShotSpotters that are a lot broader. And so what we want to figure out is how, whether it's continuing to be a true business developer and identifying more grants to continue to advance that, or focusing on it within our budget. I think anyone that knows me knows how committed I am to the funding of the Little Rock Police Department. We continue to have our focus on figuring out how we can be fiscally responsible on expanding our police department by 100 police officers over the next 4 years. But in the wake of that, you still have to focus on how are you going to address things where you may not need that actual person, and that's where you come into place with ShotSpotter. So ShotSpotter shared a lot of that highlight of how laser focused we are within the community and have that set of eyes, and we are going to be making some trips to Washington, D.C. To make certain that we can identify more U.S. Department of Justice grants to focus on ShotSpotter as well as our body cameras. And so we're going to figure out whether it's from federal resources or grant resources, how do we fund that, in addition to making certain that our budget continues to reflect our priority with law enforcement.
And if I may say just real quick, I believe this can be a model program, what you see here, for other cities in the nation. We may not be the major city with 500,000 or 1 million plus residents, but we are the capital city. And I think people are watching. I think people will learn. We'll continue to learn. But I have no doubt. I try to remain optimistic that this is going to be a model program for other cities. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, you- oh, okay. When's the last time that all of these different agencies kind of met at a round table to discuss what you've been discussing?
I think informally it happens all the time, whether it's either one-on-one, but I think, you know, it happens. All of us belong to different professional organizations, so there's opportunities there. But I think this might be one of the first times, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that we've actually let the community know that we're show the community and the state that we're doing it. But there's ongoing dialogue every day.
And then can we say that, I guess after the Power Ultra Lounge shooting, that's when all of these different agencies kind of came together to really work as one, or?
I don't think so. If you go back and you look at the history, I think since 9/11, you've seen more law enforcement agencies work together with federal agencies. And I always say there's 4 components: your federal, state, county, and local. So it's been going on, but I think those relationships just continue to get stronger and stronger on an annual, on a daily basis. So no, I think Little Rock has done a good job because the relationships have been there. And as a chief coming from the outside, that was one of the things that I wanted to know, that there was already an established relationship. So no, this is nothing new. We just continue to get closer and closer.
I have a related question about the IBN Analyst Notebook. Was that a one-time purchase, or will we need the TIPS grant to renew that?
Wayne?
It was the grant allowed us to do that, but you always have a continuation of maintenance agreements and expansion. So, yeah, one-time purchase, but clearly there's room for it to expand to a broader use maybe within the department as well, and then the maintenance that goes along with that software.